Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee here with meteorologist Joe Rayo, and welcome to the Wednesday night Joe and Joe Weather Show on the 14th of July, 2021. Brought to you by Wholesale Holiday Lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs. And that means whether you want to get your home decorated or maybe you want to just do this for a business come this holiday season, let them know. They're at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York on Long Island. And the phone number is 631-957-5106. The website is liholidaylighting.com. And brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Also on Long Island, both of them small local businesses, by the way. It's always great to support local businesses. They got everything you need from hardware to mulch to emergency preparedness supplies in case we get another tropical storm or a hurricane. 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town. OmniTrueValue.com. So I have a question for you, Mr. Rayo, because I got a message from one of our regulars, and he wanted to know because he saw this. You get these articles that they you get on Facebook and stuff, but there were two of them. One was basically a couple of paragraphs from NASA. Well, it wasn't from NASA. It was one of these so-called news sites reporting on the fact that in 9 years we're going to get the moon is going to slightly change its position, and that it
Really?
and apparently it's something that happens every 18 years anyway, and that all sorts of flooding might be produced if there are if there are storms, hurricanes, nor'easters, and of course if they time themselves with a new or a full moon. I really, when I read it, it was just one of those things that I thought, okay, this is really just clickbait. But I'd be curious as to what your commentary is on this
There's a
matter.
there's a cycle there's a cycle called the Metonic cycle, which was discovered back around 500 BC by a Greek by the name of Meton. And what Meton discovered was that at 235 lunar months or synodic months, 29.53 days, the moon will pretty much return to the same part of its orbit on the same day of the year. In other words, if tonight, Joe, this is what do we have tonight? Tonight is the 14th of July,
Right.
Bastille Day. So if there were a full moon tonight, there isn't. In fact, we're closer to new moon than full moon. But if we had a full moon tonight, 19 years from now, there would be another full moon on July the 14th. And 19 years ago, which would be 2002, if there were a full moon on July 14th tonight, there was another full moon 19 years ago on the same date. So there is a very definite cycle called the Metonic cycle. And also there's something about and this also has something to do with eclipses, an 18.6 year cycle. And this may be what that person was making reference to, or what NASA was making reference to. But in terms of, saying, well, if we had a storm when the moon was in this position 18 years ago or 19 years ago, we're going to have another one, on the same day, 19 years or 18.6 years later. That's still highly contentious. That, in fact, may be what the old Farmer's Almanac may use to make their long-range projections, along with sunspots and whatever. So the moon may indeed play a role in forecasting weather cycles, but it doesn't always work.
Right.
You can't. It's like
everything
that.
else. It's like everything else.
Well,
It doesn't always work.
it's like it's like a few years ago, and everybody said, "We found it. We found whether or not we're going to have a major or a snowy winter based upon the amount of snow that builds up in October in Siberia and whatever." And what happened?
It
There were
stopped.
years when it built up, and we said, "Oh, it's going to be a big season," and nothing happened. So
Right. It worked a bunch of it worked a bunch of years in a row. Everybody jumped on it, and then it stopped working, which is always nature's way of luring you into the abyss, and then once you're there, you can't get out. And this also Kenny Musey sent this to me. Another one. It was another story about a solar flare was detected on July 3rd and moving rapidly towards the Earth's atmosphere, and that if it, they could cause major disruption to communications networks.
Well, if a flare were to occur on July the 3rd, it would be history by now, because the subatomic particles that are shot out from a flare, they come down the road at something on the order of like 2 or 3 million miles per hour. So they get here, those particles, usually within about a day or two. So if there was anything to be felt from a flare on July the 3rd, it would have been, let's say, July the 5th or at the latest the 6th, when that took place. And there are all kinds of flares. We categorize them in terms of letters. There are C-class flares, and almost one of those occurs every day. The M-class flares, and then the unusually rare, and only happen usually around the time when the sun is very active, X flares. And usually when we get X flares, that sometimes will lead to, again, disruption of radio, maybe disruption of electrical lines or whatever. And also they are the ones that tend to produce spectacular displays of the northern lights visible all the way down in our latitudes. They're normally confined to the polar regions, but an X flare usually has enough punch to push that zone of visibility southward. But again, all of this happens within a matter of like 1 to 3 days after the eruption on the sun. So if you're talking about a flare that happened on the 3rd, it's already history, because whatever happened, and if we didn't see anything happen, it ain't going to happen.
We have a new member on the chat board tonight, Purple Mambo from Fairfield County in Connecticut. Welcome, Purple Mambo. And Bill Rogers, who is watching the show tonight with a can of Campbell's soup in one hand and a can opener in the other, wants to know, I love you, Bill, you know that. I'm still waiting for your email, so hopefully you're working on it. He wants to know, is the Metonic cycle related to the Milankovitch cycle?
No. The Milankovitch cycle takes into account the eccentricity of the Earth's orbit around the sun, and how a change in the Earth's orbit over many tens or hundreds of thousands of years may have a say in the weather and our climate. But the Metonic cycle deals solely with the moon's orbit around the Earth, and after X number of times it's gone around the Earth, again, 235 lunar months or synodic months, 29.5 days. That is the equivalent of one Metonic cycle, which is equivalent to 19 years. It's more of a calendrical thing, the calendar thing, as opposed to the Milankovitch cycle, which again is a very, very long-term cycle, which again is based upon the slow change in the eccentricity or the shape of the Earth's orbit as it moves around the sun. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's jump to the radar because we got a few things going on. Nothing crazy at the moment, at least here in the Northeast and in the northern Mid-Atlantic states. And there's actually a leftover. There's still a severe thunderstorm warning up in northeastern Monmouth County, and along with that, the coastal waters south of the South Shore of Brooklyn and Queens, and also east of Sandy Hook there. That there was one renegade cell that formed this evening, and it's just been kind of sitting there in northeastern Monmouth County. Still hasn't played itself out. We also have one ongoing special marine warning in southern Chesapeake Bay. Seems like the thunderstorms kind of split the areas in half. There's gaps. There's almost equidistant between what's going on in Delaware and down in the Delmarva Peninsula, down in Chesapeake Bay. Then you got this big gap in southern and central New Jersey. You got the cell that's sitting over Monmouth County with some echoes showing up, at least aloft over Long Island. Then another gap. And there's a snaking line of heavy thunderstorms in northernmost Connecticut, southernmost Massachusetts, right along the state line going west to east. Those cells have actually held together pretty well. There was you see that little severe thunderstorm warning popping up there, but then it disappears. Today and probably Friday, Joe, for most of the area from northeast Virginia to southern New England, I'm still thinking, unless there's just some pop-ups around, it's gonna be pretty quiet for Thursday and Friday.
I think so. The Storm Prediction Center has
All right, let me get the map up.
in areas.
Let me get the map up. Okay, the Storm Prediction Center
All right,
has.
all
Go
right,
ahead.
all right.
Go ahead. This.
The Storm Prediction Center for tomorrow, for the most part, has activity generally to the west. Now you have day 3 up, I see, but I'm talking about day 2.
It's
Generally to
switching.
the west of the Hudson River,
There's day 2.
and now they've changed this, Joe, because when I looked at this a few hours ago, they had pretty much a line, if you will, a cutoff line, which showed that for Long Island and for most areas to the east of the Hudson, that there wasn't very much in terms of any kind of activity, general thunderstorm activity. They have now much of the area, much of the tri-state area, save for Long Island, in general thunderstorm coverage. But you know what? To me, this looks like maybe a renegade, a hit or miss shower or storm pops up during the afternoon or late day hours tomorrow. Most of the area tomorrow probably doesn't see much of anything in terms of thunderstorm activity, and probably that'll be the same for much of Friday as well. We'll have to wait probably until the weekend until we get into another I won't say organized, but a region where we'll have a possibility or a crack at, a region of strong to possibly severe thunderstorm activity across the
Right.
area.
The day 3 map for Friday and Saturday, they just have general thunderstorms. They don't have any severe weather anywhere, but there is a busy area tonight we want to just we want to pay attention to, and that's in the upper Midwest. There are 2 working tornado watches, one across Iowa, the other one extends in from eastern Iowa into southern Wisconsin and extreme northwestern Illinois, and that's all encased inside an area of enhanced risk for severe weather. And you can see the marginal risk that goes from the Great Lakes south and west through the Central Plains. Also, an area of marginal risk back in southwestern Utah and in east central Nevada. Otherwise, general thunderstorms being indicated everywhere else. And I just want to go back to the radar, and we'll move to the upper Midwest so you can see it's a pretty, very busy here on the radar across eastern Iowa. We have 2 tornado warnings. Let me give this a quick refresh because the last frame on this was from about 20 minutes ago. So let's get something a little bit more current. So now the last frame is at 28, 8:30, and 8:32, 34, 36. Oh, okay, so we're only 10 minutes behind here from real time. There are 2 working tornado warnings at the moment, and 4 severe thunderstorm warnings in the state of Iowa. You can see that area of storms kind of snakes its way into southwestern Wisconsin and points east, even with some thunder and lightning probably showing up pretty soon in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And further south and west, we're seeing some showers and storms in parts of Kansas, southern Nebraska, back through Colorado, northwestern Texas, northern New Mexico, and in the southwest, where we've been talking about the fact that they're getting some beneficial rains. We've got, looks like about half a dozen flash flood warnings that are up in the northern half of Arizona, southern Utah, and even 1 severe thunderstorm warning that popped up in southwestern Utah. So much needed rain in the drought-starved southwest, so that is definitely a good thing. And as we check out on the satellite loop, you can see what's moving through here in the east. You can see those gaps in between the storms, too. You got the storms in Connecticut, and the gap, and then the little storm that's sitting over Monmouth County and the blow-off clouds moving across Long Island, and then another gap. And then you got the stuff that's over Chesapeake Bay and the Delmarva Peninsula. All of that sliding to the east. Some activity there. We talked about this dying upper low that was moving over Florida. Now it looks like the showers and storms are moving into the Gulf of Mexico, but the Hurricane Center is not really worried about that. And on the far right, the Hurricane Center has been mentioning low pressure out in the Atlantic, and you can see the swirl there on the first couple of frames before the sunset gets rid of it. It's moving west-southwestward, and it'll probably do that for a little while longer. But eventually, it's just going to get kicked out to the northeast anyway. But we've been getting these systems have been spinning up nearby, and of course, you see the action that's going on out in the Midwest. WPC in terms of rainfall over the next 7 days. Of course, all of this convectively driven, so there's always going to be some variability here. We're looking at anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches. From the East Coast and then on westward to the Plain States. There are areas of heavier rains indicated for Missouri and for southeastern Kansas and across north central Illinois, Indiana, much of Ohio. That purple area is all 1.5 inches or better. Also in southeast Louisiana, 1.5 to 3 inches over the next 7. And still showing some decent rains up into Arizona, 3 inches or more in a few spots from moisture streaming up from Mexico and moving into the Southwest. So the Southwest actually getting a fair amount of rain here for the next week or so.
Now, do you think, Joe, that compared to last year, well, last year was one of those crazy years. Anything would probably be less than that. But I mean, like in terms of at this particular point in time, mid-July, how do you think the rest of this tropical season lines up for activity compared to last year and compared to what we would call a normal year? Do you think that
we still have the La Nina. The La Nina is there and it's weak. As long as the La Nina is weak, that's usually favorable for tropical cyclone development in the Atlantic. So I would say I would say we still have to deal with what looks like a giant upper low. Let me see if that upper low, the giant upper low that was out in the Atlantic, was pretty easily visible on the radar, on the satellite. And in fact, it still is on the right. If you look at Florida, go way to the east, south of where that low is spinning up in the North Atlantic. You can see the clouds are rotating in a counterclockwise fashion here, going northeast to southwest. So you have an upper low in the higher levels of the atmosphere. So that's probably continuing to create wind shear conditions in the tropical Atlantic. So that'll keep things from developing anytime in the short range. But I think, the switch seems to always get turned on to the end of July and the beginning of August. I don't see why this season will be any different. I don't think we're going to get 30 storms again, but maybe we'll get to 15 or 20.
Name storms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Name
right.
storms. And I still also go back to what I've been saying for weeks now. This trough this persistent troughing in the eastern part of the United States is concerning if that pattern holds when we get into the heart of hurricane season, because that'll make it favorable for storms to try to at least threaten the East Coast, or at the very least, if there's too much troughing, maybe it'll just, maybe, I don't want to say just, but then the impacts will shift southward a bit, perhaps the southeast part of the United States and down to Florida. That's a guess, okay? That's a guess on my part, just to be clear.
Can't get any better than that, especially with tropical activity. So we'll see. We'll play it by ear. Well, it looks like for the next couple of days, yours truly probably has already. May I correct myself? My wife has already placed on the board that I will be out there tomorrow with the tractor mower, considering that there isn't going to be any precipitation tomorrow.
All right, Oliver.
Undo. Well, I told you one day I'm going to do it. One day I'm going to go on that tractor mower and wear a 3-piece suit, just like Eddie Albert on Green. And when that happens, I'm going to have my wife take a picture of that, and I'm going to put it on my Facebook page. Maybe underneath it, I'll have the theme song from Green Acres.
Do it on a cooler day, though. Okay.
Yes.
Do it on.
No, I'm not doing it tomorrow. With dew points near 70 and the temperature in the mid to upper 80s, and we could hit 90 on Friday. Please. But as I said a couple of days ago, it's been a crazy year. I guess it's because we've had so much humidity in the air during the last week or 10 days. The grass, everything is growing like crazy. And I keep reminding my wife, one year was about 10 or 12 years ago. We had a very hot but dry summer, and it was so dry that the grass would crunch when I stepped on the front, and I didn't have to mow the lawn for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I wish we had that. Oh, look at what she's giving me, and with water and ice too.
Oh my.
I'm going to do a commercial now. Look at that. Here it is, Joe. There you go. Thank you so much for sending me my official Fisher cup.
Right. Fisher's Forecasts.
Fisher Forecast.
On Facebook,
Are
Fisher's
you ready?
Forecast. Bill Fisher sent us both mugs, and that's his. I got mine in the dishwasher right now.
Yeah, find us on Facebook.
Right.
So there you go.
And
it has nice cool water and nice ice cubes in it. And I hope I have this tomorrow when I'm out on the tractor.
Yeah. Bill Uber pointing out, I mean, I haven't seen anything because I haven't really been looking, but he must have seen a set of forecasts about the La Nina's forecast to get stronger during the month of August. Now, if that's the case, then most definitely we're probably going to see a busy August, September, and into October if we wind up with if that verifies. Meanwhile, I just want to go back to this morning because we had that this morning goes back to yesterday's part of the conversation when we were talking about how nine times out of 10 when you've got stationary fronts or warm fronts that are lying just south of southern New England, they can take forever to move northward. And indeed, this morning there were still a lot of clouds around, and you can see how the front was analyzed this morning, running right along 40 degrees north through southern New Jersey. It moved further east. It was stationary in eastern Pennsylvania and kind of snaking up west of the Hudson through upstate New York and into western New England. Of course, to the south of there, you were already in the tropical air. Most of Pennsylvania, western New York, was getting into the tropical air. This was actually at 5 a.m. Now, on the latest map, which would be the 5 p.m., the 21Z map, voila. The warm front is from just west of Cape Cod to Boston, cutting across eastern New Hampshire, and just west of westernmost Maine. So you can see that we knew that it was going to move up northward, and in this case, it actually did its job. It just kind of flew up there, and of course, that caused the sun to come out, temperatures that heated up to the 80s to near 90 in places, and the resulting thunderstorms, though, Joe, probably not widespread, if only because of the fact that we really didn't have a whole lot approaching. It's not like we had a cold front approaching. It's not like we had a strong upper trough approaching that could trigger off some widespread thunderstorm activity. So it was whatever you could make out of the instability in the atmosphere, maybe a weak little trough that was going by, and the fact that you had your dew points that were shooting up between 65 and 70. So that wasn't enough to cause widespread severe weather.
Izzy D mentions on the chat board, Joe, that you mentioned the other day how some places out west are 100 degrees at night. Well, guess what? Last week, Izzy D took a RV trip from Chicago to Las Vegas, camped out in the RV lot in Vegas. It was 101 degrees at midnight.
I can't even. I remember you get those really, really hot days in New York City where it's 90 degrees at 11 o'clock at night, and that's just brutal. I mean, that's brutal enough. I mean, I don't care that it's a dry heat. To be 101 at midnight, I couldn't even begin to understand how that must feel.
I lived in Throgs Neck, and
as did I.
Lived in a brick house.
As did I.
And we faced, but my house faced west-northwest in a brick house, and it was killer. It was a killer to try to, my room was like a hothouse. And I tell you, when I started working, when I got my first job in 1978, first thing I did with my first paycheck was I bought an air conditioner and put it in. And I used to. It was a small room too, so I would close the door, turn the air conditioner on high, and I'd wait like a half an hour, and I'd go in there, and it'd be like the inside of a freezer, a meat locker.
Oh,
I I said I needed that after all of those years of putting up with the extreme heat. So I can't even. And so, Izzy D, it was 101 degrees at midnight. You were in an RV park. I mean, I'm assuming that the RV was not in motion, that you weren't running the motor to allow for the air conditioning. Is there an air conditioner
you
in
can,
in, in, in an RV?
you usually can plug into when you go to the RV parks. You plug in,
Mhm.
so
Mm.
you have electricity. They have gas. You even have cable.
Right. All right.
My friend Phil's shopping for an RV right now, and he one of the ones he showed me. I was reading the specs on it. It was wired for cable. It had a king size bed. It's amazing what some of those things look like. Uh, it wasn't the long trailer. Okay, these things are pretty sophisticated these days. They're wired for cable.
with
They're
a mu-
wired for internet. Everything.
with a musical doorbell.
Yeah, there's an RV park near here too. I mean, you get everything. You plug in, you get your electricity, your water, your internet service, your cable, everything. For I forgot the small amount of money per day. I think it was like $40 a day or $600 if you stay for the month. So
Right.
if you're an RV type person, which I'm not that sort of creature. Okay, back to the maps. And the other thing I want to point out is the lack of, I mentioned about the lack of any weather systems moving through the eastern United States with high pressure from the Atlantic that's built in. I made it up over 80 today. In the meantime, you could see the action in the upper Midwest being driven by a snaking front that extends from Wyoming down through Colorado with a low center in southeastern Colorado, several low centers tracked along the way. So you go from cold to warm on the fronts themselves. So it's with this low in northwestern Iowa that we're seeing that generating all the severe weather that we saw on the radar just a little while ago. So as far as the pattern is concerned, going forward, you have weakening ridges on both coasts, and as a result, eventually we've got a shortwave trough that on Friday moves through southeastern Canada, passes well to the north. So this is why I'm thinking, and we've got a little ridging going on here. So this is why I'm thinking we're not going to, other than scattered stuff, I really don't think we're going to see very much anywhere in the eastern part of the U.S. And there's a stronger shortwave on Saturday. You can see it here on the map. If you look at the flow, that indentation, the bottom part of that trough that's moving fairly quickly across southeastern Canada gets left behind. Now what's getting left behind is going to take its sweet time moving eastward, and you can see it here, Sunday and Monday, it's still kind of hanging back. So this is going to make the forecast for the weekend, I think, a little bit unsettled. Uh, I'm guessing there'll be a fairly good chance for some thunderstorms late on Saturday. And then Sunday, I guess Sunday will be driven by the fact that the front is going to kind of stall out a bit right near the coastline. So we'll have to look and see how that's going to impact the weather on Sunday. And then we talked yesterday how the model was dropping a little cutoff low back in Pennsylvania. Other models had it much further to the west, but you see here it's still kind of hanging the trough back on Monday. And then finally, as we move into Monday night and Tuesday, it clears it out. And actually, Joel, you get a little strengthening here, another trough dropping into southeastern Canada and New England, pushing down the westerlies all the way into the Carolinas. So maybe we'll get a little bit of a humidity break as long as there's nothing upstream in that northwest flow that comes down during the first part of next week.
I'm looking at next week, and it looks like we may get a break, not just in terms of humidity, but also in terms of temperature. Maybe not all at once, but I'm seeing that there's actually, it looks like maybe 2 or even 3 troughs that move through
there's 3 of them
during next week, and the first one moves through, like, let's say Monday night,
Yeah,
and then there's
that's the one for Monday night, and then
there's a second one that kind of moves through on Wednesday night, Thursday morning.
Right, there's the second one. I know the map on the screen is a little bit behind. And then there's a sharp-looking third one for Friday.
Right.
So yeah,
And I'd like to see that.
yeah, it would be it would be
Yeah,
it would be nice because that'll at least give you some shot a shot or two for some lower humidity behind each one of these that goes by, and not enough time for the humidity to come back in between these troughs because it's one after another after another.
and then if you really want to go play, and now we're talking about like 250 to 300 hours ahead from now, they've got this Gigunda high pressure ridge over the Great Lakes that, like an expanding balloon, builds over the Northeast, setting the stage for what looks like to be a really hot stretch of weather for Monday the 26th and Tuesday the 27th of July, if you want to go that far down the road.
Yeah, the maps are catching up now, so you'll see the upper high. I indicated it here, and yeah, you're right. That will bring hot weather for a stretch of days if that winds up verifying. I want to look at the European for a moment, though. Let me just go back and let's take a look at the European because that was a little different last night from what the GFS had. It actually had a much look at this on the European, Joe, on day 10. That's a deep trough that it has in the eastern part of the United States. It's as deep as the GFS has it. The European has, there's one trough on Monday. There's a second one that comes through Tuesday night, Wednesday. And then look at this one. If this is, this wrapped up cutoff low that's west of James Bay comes diving into northern New England and brings the westerlies all the way down almost to Miami. Take a look. It's up on the screen now. Look how deep this trough is. I mean, that's impressive. This goes back to the troughs that we saw back in June.
Yes, that is amazing.
That
would be.
I'm just for laughs. I'm going to
break. My goodness, looking for you.
Oh, this would be.
I mean, for you, you've got the.
People down here will be thinking that there was an act of God to bring lower dew points all the way down into Georgia and northern Florida if this were the case. I just want to take a look to see what the 850, just how, because we don't have all the same maps that we do like we have on the GFS. So we're just going to have to figure it out. Here's the 850 temperature anomaly. So at 5,000 feet anyway. That's a cool shot of air. At least at 850, Joe, those are some pretty impressive anomalies for the Northeast and the Great Lakes. Again, if this is correct, this would be for next weekend. This is Saturday, July 24th, if this winds up verifying. But again, I'm going to go back to the fact that it's another example of the trough dropping into the eastern part of the United States. Now, granted, if we had a tropical system with a flow indicated like this, there's no way on God's green earth that this would come up the East Coast in any fashion. But the point is that, it's not a whole lot of imagination to think that, okay, in this case, the trough drops into the east and it's right along the coast at like 75, the axis of the trough. But maybe the next one, the axis of the trough is at 80 or maybe at 85. So again, something to pay attention to in the long term if we keep getting these troughs dropping into the east. And as far as the surface is concerned, we'll go back to the GFS and you'll see there's except for scattered pop-ups, there's almost nothing in terms of thunderstorm activity up and down the eastern seaboard on Thursday. And on Friday, you get some storms in Ohio and back up into western New York. But Joe, they're way in. I mean, way to the west and north on the GFS. So SPC, has moved that general thunderstorm area a little bit further to the east. I don't know. You look at this and you think that was it really worth it to move it a few miles to the east? They could maybe just should have left it alone. I'm not sure. We'll find out when reality hits. And then on Saturday, with that first in a series of troughs, the model does generate some active thunderstorms Saturday evening from Boston, south and west through Virginia and into western North Carolina. And then that front hanging around along the coast on Monday, a little ripple bring some more showers and storms late in the day, Sunday or Sunday night. And then finally it moves out. And now we'll start to watch these troughs coming down from the northwest to see if they do anything. Perhaps the one, I would probably guess that the strongest one of the bunch, which would be later next week, probably has the best chance of producing any thunderstorm activity. And that won't come through until late in the week. But you got that nice high there. It's a nice little high that's over Lake Superior and over Michigan that builds into the eastern part of the U.S. next weekend. So if you want, if you're looking for a real humidity break, the GFS offers you some hope, and the European offers you nirvana for next weekend. Okay.
Yeah, that's the important weekend, as I said, for us at our house, because we're going to have our 1 year delay of my son's wedding and going to the catering hall and the church and everything else. And the last thing we'd like to have is hot, hazy, humid weather or some kind of a tropical system. I'll tell you.
Or a stalled front. You don't want that.
Or a stall front. Yeah, exactly.
That is actually looking, that's actually looking quite nice if that holds. If we're sitting here a week from today looking at this, you're going to be jumping for joy. You won't have to use the extra deodorant.
We did not need that, Joe.
Well,
we did not need that comment.
I'm just saying,
Remember all those Bugs Bunny and Warner Brothers cartoons where, the character would look at the audience and go, B-O.
Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, God. All right, let's get this Briller Jeopardy done for tonight. Izzy D hitting Super Chat tonight. Thank you, Izzy. Glad you got to experience that RV trip from Chicago to Las Vegas and the 100-degree temperatures at midnight. Can't imagine. All right. So, Joe, these are the debut years of the following shows, television shows. You get a 3-year margin of error, and 8 out of 10, you'll win a DVD set of any show in the top 10. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I Married Joan.
I Married. I loved when I was a little boy, and I do mean a little boy. I was probably still I was probably still in the crib, but I loved that music, the theme song. Jim Backus was the co-star of I Married Joan.
Right.
So, based on that, I will say that I Married Joan probably made its debut about 1958.
Oh, God. Way off. Way off, Joe.
You're kidding.
Listen,
You're kidding.
No, listen to me. If you really think back to the show, okay, the show's open. As I remember, the show's open was basically done with pieces of cardboard and cartoon, stick figures drawn on it, okay? 1952.
52. Then when I was watching it, either the show had run its course and it was already in syndication. That's probably what the story was on that. But yes. I still remember the theme song because he's this little 3-year-old kid in the crib going, I married Joan, what a girl, what a world, what a wife.
Now, as a side question, can you name the Abbott and Costello movie that Joan Davis was in?
Oh, no, I can't. Abbott and Costello Meet Dracula. I don't know.
No, it's actually one of my favorites. Hold That Ghost.
Hold That Ghost. All right.
When they do the candle seed and Hold That Ghost, that's Joan Davis sitting next to Lou Costello.
Really?
Yes.
Too bad they didn't have Jim Backus playing Thurston Howell III.
Yes.
One of those Abbott and Costello.
All right. So,
although I will point out one thing about Thurston Howell. That evolved from a character that Jim Backus created on the Alan Young radio show. Remember Alan Young?
Yeah, I remember.
He played
Alan
Wilbur
Young.
on Mr. Ed.
Wilbur.
Mr. Ed. Yeah, Alan Young had a radio show, popular radio show, and Jim Backus played a well-to-do neighbor of his. He wasn't Thurston Howell. However, if you heard Jim Backus, it sounded every bit like Thurston Howell. So when they gave him the role of Thurston Howell on Gilligan's Island, he probably said, I'll make believe I'm whoever it was on the Alan Young show.
David Schwartz wants us to look at Felicia in the Pacific. So we'll do that right after we get done with this. We'll give time for the satellite loop to load up. So we'll take a look at Felicia in the Pacific. In the meantime, the next show is You Bet Your Life.
Well, You Bet Your Life started in 1948 on radio, and I think it made it to television by about 1952. So I'll say 1952.
You're having the same trouble Right, you're having the same trouble that I had last night with some. I was way off on a few of them. 1947.
47 on television or on radio?
No, on television.
I don't think it could have been on television in 1947.
Well, that's what he has
radio,
here.
I will believe. Well, I'm going to dispute this.
All right. Well,
I'm going to bring it to the Supreme Court.
Okay. You might want to try. In other words, you want to take it to the highest court in the land, and to quote Bugs Bunny after scaling him out, and he said, "I should have picked one of the lower courts." Okay, so.
My wife is watching. My wife is watching right now, and maybe either on the chat board or on the intercom. Look up on Wikipedia when You Bet Your Life began. And I'm sure that in 1947 it was on radio first and then moved to television about 1951 or 52.
Okay.
But
the next one, as we scour the bowels of the internet to find out the answer to this question, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet.
That's another show that started on radio, Joe. I'm not even sure now if it's. Let's see. I think it ended its run in 1966, and it was on for something like 13 years or whatever. So I'll say 1953.
1952.
Okay.
The show debuted on ABC Radio on October 27th, 1947, according to David Schwartz, and then moved to CBS Radio, debuting on October 5th, 1949, before making the transition to NBC television and network on October 4th, 1950.
And as a person who loves old time radio, Ozzie and Harriet was one of the shows that I said to myself, how did it possibly make it more than 2 weeks on radio? It was like the most bland radio show that you possibly could imagine. And even now into television, it was on for a long run on television. But I don't understand, that was one of the shows I just, really? Really? It was a popular show? Or maybe it's just because I'm listening to a 1947 radio show in 2021.
Well, with a 2021
just
mind. Exactly.
Yes.
Fantasy Island.
Fantasy Island was 19 blah 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 blah. It also came the same year as Love Boat. I'll say 1970. 77.
Ding 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 ding. Correct.
Right.
On the nose. The Time Tunnel.
Time Tunnel was 1966. It was one of my favorite shows. I was so upset when they canceled it after 1 year.
And what year? Yes, the debut year for the Time Tunnel.
1966.
Okay, you faded out on the audio there for a second. And 1966 is the exact answer. Gidget.
Gidget was. I'm not sure if it was 65 or 64. No, I'll say 65.
65 is the correct. Is on the nose again. You got
yes.
Three noses in a row here. Barney Miller.
Barney Miller. 1970. Because All in the Family was popular in 71, and then a whole slew of shows that tried to copy it. It was probably about 1970. I'll say 73.
75. So you're
doing good here.
The Doris Day Show.
Doris Day show. 19. I remember the Mad Magazine satire of that. They occasionally would do satires of movie and TV shows,
Right.
and they called it the Doris Days DAZE show. And somebody in the satire said, oh, it was one of the kids. She played like a single parent,
Right.
and
Same.
one of her sons said, when are you going to get married again? And Doris Days says, well, there's only one man that I would marry, but unfortunately the Pope can't marry me.
I will say
19.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. 19
You
what?
go ahead. 1960. I'll say 60. 67.
68 was the debut year.
68.
One interesting thing about Doris Day is, having seen a lot of her movies, I kind of always thought that when she did dramas that she was in, that she could be a little bit over the top, okay? But she had an incredible, just absolutely incredible singing voice.
Yes.
Okay, and this dates back to when she first broke into the show business back in early 40s. But she's one of those in terms of time, the time span that her career was in, that she made movies with some of the classic actors like James Cagney, for instance, Clark Gable, and a host of others. And then, as of course, later on in her career, she the actors that were famous in the 50s, 60s, and 70s were, 50s and 60s, because after that she really didn't do very much. But just a very interesting career, because Jimmy Stewart, for example, when she did The Man Who Knew Too Much with Hitchcock. So she had one foot in the Hollywood classic era. She was in there toward the end of the Hollywood classic era, which I would say are movies that were done prior to, say, 1960, and still going with the more modern era, which I would go with movies that were after 1960, where she was with Cary Grant and Rock Hudson, and his face is right in front of me, and I can't think of his name right now. Oh, good Lord. It'll come to me. Next show, 77 Sunset Strip.
77.
WABC.
Before we get into that, the one movie I remember Doris Day was in was when I went to Radio City Music Hall. Where Were You When the Lights Went Out? With a hit song by the Lettermen. They did a hit song about that. That was about the New York blackout in 1965. And also, if you were listening to ABC Radio on the day of John Kennedy was assassinated, November 22nd, 1963, shortly after 1:30, they were right in the middle of playing a song being sung by Doris Day, "Hooray for Hollywood." And right in the middle of the song, that's when they cut in and broke in with the news about the first shots being fired at the motorcade in Dallas, Texas. 77 Sunset Strip. That was, I guess, in the early 60s. I'll say 1961.
58. So you're still within you were in the margin of error. Just made it. And James Garner was the name that I couldn't think of. James Garner. And the last one on the list is Miami Vice.
I'm totally out of my. See, this was a show that was like, I think it came into the 80s. I'll say 1987. I'm a total guess.
1984. So you're within the margin of error. And the chairman, Scott Griller, has assessed himself a $5 penalty for the error on the "You Bet Your Life" question. So the chairman has penalized himself.
Oh, okay. I appreciate that, Scott.
Oh, good Lord. So, we're going to skip tomorrow night, folks, as the weather's pretty quiet. So Joe and I are going to take a Thursday off, and which means that we shan't be back until Sunday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah,
No,
it's just almost like the 4th of July again.
and by the way, no sign of Reuben Fairchild. He's been gone for a while now. We must have scared him away.
Yes.
So good that we don't have to. Nice. Or maybe he is away and then he comes back tomorrow only to find out that we're not going to have a show for 3 days. Oh, good
Now, weren't you
Lord.
supposed to look up something for a tropical system for somebody?
Yes, David wanted to take a look at Felicia. So I got the loop up here, so let's take a look. It's still loading some missing frames, but there's enough here. And you can kind of see it there. It's on the smallish side, well to the south and east of Baja California. That frame you see jumping up is that it's still filling in the missing frames in the loop because I have this is only a 12 image frame, a 12 image loop, so it should be done or soon enough. Or there's a missing frame in there somewhere. But you can see it is the storm is on the smallish side. Also, just look up to the north, and you don't have to go that far north. All the clouds that are from northern Baja California and then up the coast of California, that's all the Pacific low clouds, folks. There's virtually no subtropical Pacific in the eastern Pacific. You go from very warm water to very cool water over a very, very short distance, which is why these storms, when they move west-northwest, as soon as they get north of 20 degrees north latitude, they just they start running into that colder water and they begin to fall apart. So that's why it's so rare to see a tropical system to actually find its way up in. You do get them on occasion where you get the remnant low winds up going up into California, but it's very rare that you get something that's still at tropical storm strength making it up into California, although there have been instances where that has happened. I think there's even a case of a hurricane that a storm that was minimal hurricane when it reached up to the northern Baja and San Diego many, many years ago. I think it was back in the 1940s. But you probably have to have the absolutely perfect setup in order to get to have that happen. Let's look at what NHC's got on it. And by the way, here's that system that's out here in the Atlantic that we showed you on the U.S. loop, 10% chance of developing over the next 5 days. So we know that nothing's going to come of that. And as far as Felicia is concerned, 14.8 north, 115.3 west, moving west-northwest at 15. So it's destined for that Pacific graveyard. Top winds are 65 miles an hour. And you can see the track on this is actually they turn it to the west and they bring it up to a hurricane strength. So it never really gets up to 20. It stays pretty far south. It looks like it stays south of 16. And they keep it at a hurricane until it gets out to about 133, 134 west on Monday when they weaken it to a tropical storm. I just want to, let's take a look at what's going on out there. Because now we're at the time of year that sometimes they do like to make the trip westward. So let me find a good map to use here. Well, let's use the Eastern Pacific Surface map first, and then we'll see. Then we'll switch over to the Hawaii map. All right, so it's gone from here. Looks like it's actually on the edge of the picture on the far left. You can see it as these frames start to, load one by one. I'm running it backwards. They're not running. These storms are not moving from west to east, folks. They're going east to west. I'm just. Oh, there's actually 2 of them. So let's see what's going on. So it looks like that there's another one that forms off the coast of Mexico in the next few days. So there is at 15 and about 121. So that's Felicia. And they carry it west. A second one develops there. You see it there south of Baja, so that'd be the G storm. And now, of course, we're at Tuesday night. So let's switch off. Let's switch geography. So there's obviously a strong east-west ridge in the Pacific that's causing that to happen. So let's go to the Hawaii geography. And more often than not, you've got that force field that's around Hawaii with these storms that come in from the west. And here it is. It kind of moves west or even south of west, and then it's gone. I just love how when these storms approach Hawaii, they just die. Look at this. The first one actually falls apart down at around 14 and 152. The second one passes well to the northwest on this run from the Hawaiian Islands. But look at all those isobars, Joe, up to the north. I mean, you've got this big surface high that's out there in the Pacific. I mean, you just got, it's basically just draw straight lines from east to west, and you've got a strong Pacific ridge there that's kind of driving everything westward. Very interesting. Just also let's just really quick, let's bring up the upper air on this. There's nothing going on the Atlantic side that warrants anything. There's a couple of weak upper lows up there. That's probably the reason why. Maybe there's some wind shear. There's like some kind of an upper low that's sitting to the, I'm assuming those are upper lows that are east of Hawaii. There's reflections of the tropical system, or perhaps both. So perhaps there's some upper air wind shear issues with regard to those tropical systems as they move on to the west. But we'll keep an eye on them in case they surprise and decide to make the trip all the way across. You never know. Every once in a while they do hold together. Yeah, every once in a while they do do that and try to hold together. Okay, so no show for tomorrow. So we'll be back on Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So have fun the next 3 days. Stay safe, and we'll see you then.
You enjoy your next few days, Joe. I would normally, if you were up here, I would say stay cool, but you've already been more cool than I have, so
I have to
enjoy
tell you,
whatever weather.
I get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's so nice outside. It's a little it's a little damp, but the temperatures get down into the mid 60s every night, and that's such a huge difference. I could bear the heat in the day if I know that at night it's going to get down to 60, in the 60s, and you can be reasonably comfortable. You don't have to have the air conditioning screaming all night long. Oh, and by the way, my electric bill for the month of June. Any guesses?
Yes. $48.50.
No. It was more than my May bill, which was $60. The June bill was $90.
Oh, well. Your June bill is approximately well, I'm not going to say 1/3, but in that same ballpark with my bill. So
it was $90 your June bill?
No, your bill is approximately 1/3 of my bill.
Oh, okay, I got you.
For the month of June.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of those things that people thinking about moving down south, that's one of those check boxes that you look. Electric bill, check, lower, among other things. Bill Rogers says, do I really get up that early? Yeah, because I go to bed early. After the show's done, I usually have a glass of wine, and then I go to sit around, watch a little bit of TV, and then I go to bed. But
an interesting contrast, by the way, between May and June in terms of electric bills up here. What I think the last 4 days of June had highs at Central Park in the 90s. That was 11 degrees above average. Meanwhile, the last 4 days of May all had lows in the 40s.
Yes.
And it was 10 degrees below average.
Yes.
So you went up and you went down, depending upon what month you're looking at. So crazy.
Tim, I've got fishing. I have a fishing spot 300 yards from my front door. So all I got to do is just walk out the front door and down the hill, and I got a nice little river with pockets where the water collects and the fish, the trout hide in there. So yeah, right here, 300 yards. So I don't have to walk far. Okie doke. So everybody, see you on Sunday, and enjoy your weekend.
Have fun.